Welcome to Revolution Radio. Me and my friends will be talking about revolutions today. My name's Affan, and I will be talking about the American Revolution. The revolution that kickstarted most of the revolutions worldwide was the American one. You've probably heard about this revolution because we live in the US. Before the revolution, however, was the 7 Years' War. The 7 Years, or the French and Indian War, started when the British wanted more land in the Americas. The British got the land, but they also got the debt associated with the war. This caused the British to tax the 13 colonies heavily. This caused acts such as the Townshend Act and the Stamp Act. The Townshend Act imposed an import tax on items such as glass, lead, paper, and other various items. The Stamp Act was a tax toward any form of newspaper or any form of document. This, along with the Boston Massacre, where British soldiers shot at rioters and killed multiple people, started a revolution. The war lasted from 1775, where the first shots came from Lexington, to 1783, where the Treaty of Paris ended the war. Multiple individuals stand out in this revolution. George Washington has the biggest name in American history. He was a commander-in-general of the United States, which eventually led to his role as the first president of the United States. Ben Franklin was another big name in the revolution. He was a scientist who developed study about electricity and mathematics. He was also a negotiator for the U.S. and wrote various papers that ended the war and started the development of a new country, including the Treaty of Paris. He also ended up on the $100 bill. Paul Revere was a notable name because he was a symbol of patriotism and a soldier in the war. These people were the people to end the war, but what was the effect of the war? This event was probably the most important in world history because it gave other colonies a hope that they too can revolt and gain control. It gave the idea of revolution, which was later used in France and Latin America, which you'll hear later. This was also the rise of democracy and a people-controlled country. Democracy would later be used in lots of countries around the world. Now on to Nathan for the French Revolution.
Thanks for that, Affan. That was great. My name's Nathan. I'll be talking about the French Revolution. Now, the French Revolution started after the American Revolution, with the French helping the Americans to defeat the British. But what happened is that the French country became very bankrupt and lost lots of money, in which started a lot of tensions between the third estates and the higher estates. And the first and second estates were mostly conformed of aristocrats and kings and queens and lords and things such as that. But the third estate, which was the other 98% of the country, was all the peasants and the workers. And so the third estate was very, very frustrated with the first and seconds, and so they declared themselves almost a separate entity from the official government of France, in which then started the Revolutionary War, French Revolution. With the French Revolution, many ideas were Enlightenment ideas from the Enlightenment period were progressed through, and ideas of democracy were heavily pushed, such as that in the American Revolution. Things really escalated in 1793 when King Louis and his Queen Marie Antoinette were executed, and that really led to the extreme violence that the French Revolution is known for. With the French Revolution, new ideas were expounded, and a republic was formed, and they really were thinking about starting over, whereas like in the American Revolution, they were thought to be building off of things already set in place, but the French Revolution was very much starting from anew, and they even declared that the year that the French Revolution occurred, that was year one, a new year for the French, and so that really led to lots of things. But what happened with the French Revolution is that it wasn't. It didn't last long enough. There were many of the Enlightenment ideas that did progress, but the government wasn't strong enough to the point that Napoleon Bonaparte then took over France, and he wasn't nearly as oppressive as the kings and queens in the monarchy of the former government, but he was an emperor that still enforced the Enlightenment ideas of freedom and religious freedoms and things like that. And that's where the French Revolution ended. And now into a commercial break.
What, to the American slave, is the 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, a gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. Your boasted liberty, an unholy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts at liberty and equality, hollow mockery, your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parades and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. This is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shockingly and bloody than there are people of these United States at this very hour. Frederick Douglass. End slavery.
Hello, this is Tyler Curtis, and I will be talking to you today about the Haitian Revolution. This revolution in the Caribbean island, the location of Haiti, happened between 1791 and 1804. During this time, the land mass of Haiti was completely controlled by plantations. They made up 40% of the world's sugar and half of its coffee that was sent out to the New World and just overall globally. This plantation system obviously required a huge amount of slave labor, so there was approximately 500,000 people that made up the colony's population, while 40,000 were white, the rest were slaves or freed slaves. And so this obviously caused enormous inequality, which then primed this country for explosion into a revolution. So this revolution happened, and all the slaves and the freed slaves revolted, and it was very brutal, and they completely took over the government and took over the country that was there. They gained complete rights that the French were withholding from them, and they established their own government and took control fully of the country. This was very unique because many of these revolutions started by slaves weren't very successful, but this was the one that completely worked. So after they had taken over, Jean-Jacques Dessalines was the country's first head. He was one of the main revolution leaders, and he set up the government, and he became the first head, and he declared Haiti's independence on January 1st, 1804. And so as he did this country of Haiti changed drastically. The plantation system that they had going on was run through slave labor, but slavery did not exist after the revolution, so they didn't have the labor force to run those plantations, so their export of sugar and coffee majorly went down, which caused very large debt in their new country, which then kept building up and up because of this. And even when they were revolting, they burned down many of the plantations, so they didn't have the fields to even work on. So this caused much large debt that spread and lasted with them forever. One thing that spread into other countries was the idea of this revolution. It was very unique and spread and inspired many other people.
The next revolution would happen in Latin America soon after the French Revolution. In Latin America, there was a very strong European presence, and it was mostly Spain and Portugal that controlled most of Latin America. Most of the colonies that were in Latin America had a large tax known as the 1/5. The 1/5 would be 30 to 40%, even though that's not a 1/5, would all be paid to the colony owner. This made the Creoles and Mestizos to grow discontent with the rule of the Spanish and the Portuguese in the colonies. The first revolution started in Mexico by Miguel Hidalgo, who denounced the bad government and declared independence. This revolution proved not to be very successful because he was short caught and executed, and beheaded in 1811. Soon after, in Venezuela, Simón Bolívar and Francisco de Miranda started a movement against the Spanish government with a small army. They soon got wiped out, and Simón turned Francisco into the Spanish authorities to grant him and his fellow officers safe passage out of New Granada in 1812. About 4 years later, in 1816, Bolívar would return to Venezuela after defeating Spanish in Colombia. During the same year Simón returned to Venezuela, José de San Martín started and quickly ended a revolution in Chile in 1817, starting the chain of victories against Spain and Portugal. Simón Bolívar would continue to capture Argentina and Ecuador before 1818. Mexico soon gained independence in 1821 by Agustín de Iturbide and Guerrero, who made the Plan of Iguala. The Plan of Iguala was the alliance between the two and replacing the Spanish government with a monarchy in Mexico, making it an independent country. Simón Bolívar had a plan of conquering all of Latin America and making it one whole country, just like the United States. But Simón Bolívar died of tuberculosis on December 17, 1830, before he could unite all of Latin America.
This concludes Revolutions Radio. We hope you enjoyed.